Alarm bells began ringing last fall when the Maryland State budget analysis was first released. And on the horizon, looming bigger than the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, was the projection of a $3 billion, that's right, that's what I said, $3 billion deficit. Mike, as the state wrestles with this big a deficit, Maryland's finances are in the red. What happened to the post-pandemic surplus that Governor Hogan left and the $25 billion in federal COVID aid money that was allocated to the state?
Well, I mean, the challenge that I think every jurisdiction had was that was all one-time money. And so it was just coming in as Governor Hogan left, and inevitably those dollars have to be spent. The challenge that I think really is, how do you spend those dollars as one-time resources on one-time things? And I think a lot of jurisdictions didn't do that and are now wrestling with the consequences, because that's the challenge. Once you start to provide services and you start to pay for those things, people start to expect that those services are going to be there. And so then what do you do? And so I think that creates a real challenge. And I think Maryland's not alone in addressing that. I think the other challenge that was there and has been there is we've had tepid economic growth in the state since the mid-20 teens. And so as a result, I think that those dollars help to mask some of that problem. And so now, as those dollars have been spent down, you're back to where we would have been. And so now the challenge is, how do you create a pathway forward with challenges like addressing the blueprint and some significant investments that the state has made? And it's going to be a challenge. And I think the governor has put out a reasonable approach. I think when the alarm bells sounded, he was quick to jump in there and say something. And so I don't think there are easy ways to do it. And I don't necessarily know that I agree with everything he's put out there, but he's at least trying to meet the challenge head on.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike, exactly, because of the lack of economic growth in the state. I heard a terrible statistic. I didn't have a chance to vouch it and analyze whether it was accurate or not, but there's something like 134,000 jobs fewer in the state of Maryland than there was 10 years ago. I mean, it's just, you wonder what people are thinking about. And Mark, what are people thinking about? Governor Moore's new budget proposal would raise taxes on Maryland's wealthiest residents by adding 2 new brackets to make it more progressive at income thresholds the states previously didn't account for. Didn't any of the advisors tell Governor Moore about the millionaire tax debacle under former Governor Martin O'Malley?
Well, that certainly is part of our history, and it was a debacle. But if anything, it will be worse this go around. And let me just push back a little bit on what Mike said. States around Maryland have budget surpluses, and part of the issue is, and have been able to continue to cut taxes. West Virginia, for example, has cut taxes fairly dramatically. What those states didn't do was take that surplus, that COVID money, that one-time money that Mike appropriately referred to, and use it to kind of spend it as though it would continue forever. And that's the predicament that Maryland is in. Now, one of the challenges we have, unlike when the millionaire's tax went in with O'Malley, is that so many states around the country have gotten rid of the graduated income tax and cut their brackets down in order to be more competitive. So look at North Carolina, West Virginia, a variety of states that people have a tendency to move to. So we're now facing more competition, not just from the low or no state income tax states like Florida, but from other states that have dropped their brackets and therefore are that much more competitive with Maryland, at least at the millionaire level.
So this is anecdotal, but what I heard yesterday, and again, I haven't had a chance to verify this, is that Maryland is considering changing the number of days that qualifies you as a Maryland taxpaying resident from 181 to 90. And if that's the case, I think you're going to see a huge exodus of wealthy people coming out. So, Mike, what is the General Assembly going to do here? I hear, a lot of kick the can down the road, but there doesn't seem to be any lack of spending bills in the General Assembly.
Well, and there never is. that's one way I guess you can point to everybody. I tried to do something. I think the challenge is real. I think the governor has put some economic development issues within his budget, trying to make things more attractive from a corporate perspective. But I think given where the Trump administration is trying to go with the federal workforce, which would have a huge impact on the Maryland. But I think that the General Assembly is going to have to be very cognizant that whatever they do has to reduce spending. There can't be a kicking the can down the road because there just isn't the economic growth to sustain it. And I think the variability of what the Trump administration may do to federal workers only exacerbates that situation. And so we've got to shore up for the future.
So my industry is real estate, both commercial and residential, and I know that we are very worried about the fact that they may try to increase transfer taxes on settlements. We did this a couple years ago, and if you talk about affordability of housing, you're just going to make it more unattainable for people. So this is a big issue that we're going to have to watch very closely as the General Assembly goes through their 90-day session.